Hello. So starting off with my birth, I was born on January 9th, 2004 in Austin, Texas. Thankfully, as described by Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I had my physical and safety needs met immediately. I had a house, I had clothes, I had a family who cared about me. Thankfully, food and water has never been a problem or source of anxiety for my family. At least if it was, I was not aware. I also began to develop my sense of trust and mistrust for people. Trusting my family, trusting my mom, my brother, my father, just people who are close to me. I also began to develop my sensory motor skills, described by Piaget, with learning how to walk, learning how to speak, run around, play with a ball, whatever it might have been. I also began to have basic understanding of punishment and reward. If I did something wrong, my parents would punish me. If I did something bad, if I did something good, if I was behaving correctly, my parents would reward me, or at least praise me for it. Moving on to preschool, unfortunately, my belonging and love needs were not entirely met, as described by Maslow. I, of course, had a very loving family who cared about me. I wasn't abused or anything like that, but there was some level of neglect from my parents. Not intentional. They were just both very busy, and outside of family vacations, I didn't get much attention from them. I was on my own for a lot of time. Felt kind of isolated from my family. I began to develop my sense of guilt as well as pride. I remember going off of pride. I remember I was super proud of myself when I finally learned how to spell my name in preschool. And I bragged about it to my friends because I was the first one to be able to do that. But I also understood guilt, because even if I did something wrong and if no one else knew, I would know, and I would feel bad about it, and often I would tell my parents because I just felt bad. I did continue to develop my pre-operational skills, as described by Piaget. Again, continuing to learn how to speak, vocalize, use picture logic. In these pictures you're seeing here, I'm helping my grandpa do the put up the electrical wires in our basement, so that was pretty cool. I also I began to understand my view of right versus wrong, aka my morals. I knew I liked being nice to people. I knew calling people bad names was something I didn't like. I thought that was wrong. Very basic morals that I was starting to develop. Moving on to elementary school. As described by Maslow, unfortunately, my self-esteem and self-actualization needs were not entirely met. In first grade, I really struggled in school. I had a really hard time focusing. I didn't understand a lot of things. And I just very quickly started to fall behind because I couldn't keep up with the rest of the class. And that was very quickly, noticed by my school. And really from then, I was kind of told indirectly by the school that I was just not as smart as the rest of the kids. I would be told by kids, oh, you're just not the same level as the rest of us, or, whatever. It really hurt my self-esteem, and it really pushed me to a fixed mindset, unfortunately. However, as described by Piaget, I was able to start thinking logically, using my concrete operational skills. I also became grounded in my morals, as described by Kohlberg. I really started to understand what I thought was right, what I thought was wrong. Really started to understand stuff like that. I thankfully experienced social constructivism in my school, as described by Bruner, with group projects, forming friendship with my peers, stuff like that. Along with this, I was exposed to a spiral curriculum, where, everything that I was learning started to build off of each other. As you'll see here, I started to learn how to sing and play the piano. Unfortunately, I don't play the piano anymore, but I do sing. So I really started to get interested in music, and it's still something I love to do. I continued to be affected by my exosystem, as described by Bronfenbrenner, unfortunately, again, due to my parents' stressful jobs. There was a lot of tension between me and my parents, especially my dad, for a lot of time. In fourth grade, I was thankfully exposed to a warm demanding teacher model, as described by Lisa Delpit. I had a teacher who was kind, uplifting, encouraging, but she also pushed us to our absolute best all the time, and it really helped me to push past my anxiety. Of course, I still experienced it. I still experiences it today, but she really helped me. I was also often represented in the books at my school, but there wasn't much diversity, unfortunately, really just white characters, mostly because there were very few people of color at the school I grew up in. But even so, it would have been amazing for there to be more diversity in the books. Moving on to middle school. As described by Maslow, my self-esteem needs were continuing to not be entirely met, as along with just not being quite at the same level as a lot of my peers, I also started to realize that I was queer. And I didn't quite understand that because it was never talked about with my family. It was never discussed at my school, and so I didn't understand it. I didn't know anyone else who was going through the same issues, at least not that I was aware of. So I felt very isolated in that experience. But even still, I was able to start to develop and understand my identity, as described by Erickson, start to really understand who I was, even though there was a part that was not entirely understood. I also moved on to PHA. PHA's formal operational stage. I created my opinions, ideas, questions about things I didn't understand. I was exposed to experiential learning, as described by Dewey, because I was given, more opportunities to create after I started to understand the material, which was really awesome. We were also placed in different academic levels to meet our zone of proximal development, as described by Vygotsky, with like high ability classes and whatever, which is really awesome because I was able to be in a level that I could succeed in. Unfortunately, there was a lack of culturally responsive teaching. Aside from white, straight, financially stable people, there wasn't much representation in or outside of the classroom. Again, didn't affect me too much, but not having that representation of queer people really affected me. Moving past that to high school, I started to finally become grounded in my identity, specifically my queer identity, as described by Erickson's stages of development. I started to understand who I was. I became proud of who I was. I came up to my family and friends. They were all very welcoming, which was absolutely amazing. I also developed my personal principles. I knew that I really cared for equality. I wanted to help students because I know how much I struggled in school. And I know that school is a very scary place. My Chronos system was also affected by COVID, unfortunately. That's how it was for everyone, though. Don't have many pictures from COVID because it was not a good time. There are a few pictures of me performing or practicing for show choir in masks or outside. It was a very interesting situation. Here you'll see a bunch of my final performances in high school and my marching band, show choir performances, which is really amazing. Anyway, there was a lack of trauma-informed teaching at my school, unfortunately. My girlfriend, there are a few pictures of her in here somewhere, but my girlfriend, my girlfriend lost her father when we were sophomores. Obviously, that is a very traumatic experience for someone to go through. And the school, specifically her teachers, but even just the administration of the school really did not do what they needed to do to help her. There was also a bad attempt at social and emotional learning. My school tried, but it was very new and underdeveloped, so it didn't quite work. I hope that continues to improve at my school for future generations. There was also a damaging image of the child at my school. The very first day of my freshman year, we were all told, all of us freshmen were told, that we had a responsibility to keep our school's ranking in this state, which really rubbed me the wrong way because I don't view school as a place for competition. I view school as a place to learn. And that just really immediately off the bat communicated to me how my school saw us students. Finally, I moved into college. It was super stressful, but super amazing. I started to experience Bloom's taxonomy with my educational philosophy and just what I believe in terms of education. Here you'll see me in some of my pictures with the marching band and basketball band. And thankfully, finally, especially with my education classes, I finally experienced culturally responsive teaching, which I didn't have for really my entire public school experience. And it's been very refreshing. So, now I'm here, and I hope that I continue to develop and become the best version of myself.